This episode was suggested by Tato on Discord. You can get access to the MCP Discord server by joining the MCP Patreon at any tier. Thank you to Lucy, Izzy, Ashlyn, CD-ROM, Alex C., Sean, Megan, Gabriel, Shay, Sarah C., Amy G., Froggy, Veronica, Tia, Ritual and Root, Rami, Giselle, Julia J., Elise, Bella, Jason L., Bronwyn, Michael Y., Queen Harper, Reunica, Adriana V., Vicky L., Elisa Fant, Knickknack, Sean L., Rachel, Russell F., Red, Beth Ann, Alan F., Adria M., Jen, Justine, Hansel, Jordan R., Sabrina O., Laura T., Christine A., Catherine K., Emily B., Danny, and everyone else who's become a patron in the last few months. You're all amazing. Thank you. Humans are fascinated by gore and violence, but even more so the mysterious and unsolved. Interest in these disturbing and unpleasant subjects is called morbid curiosity, and it has gripped millions of people throughout the ages. I am one of those people. My name is Hallie, and this is the Morbid Curiosity Podcast. There are places in the world that humans have yet to conquer. These places are usually difficult to access, remote, or extremely wild. The Nahanni National Park Reserve in Canada's Northwest Territories is all three of these. As it's completely surrounded by sheer rock walls and dense forests, the area is only accessible by paddling upstream for miles by canoe, or hiking and climbing over several days. There's also extreme weather and carnivores to contend with. On top of these dangers, those who visited the area in the past either returned with reports of mysterious and terrifying experiences, or never returned at all. It's said that the bodies of those who went missing were eventually found, but without their heads, which is why the Nahanni Valley is also known as the Valley of Headless Men. While many national parks have hosted strange events and even murders, the stories out of the Nahanni National Park Reserve are wilder than most, with both very real dangers such as sheer cliffs, sinkholes, flash floods and dense fog, and haunting myths of deadly creatures, gold, murder, a hidden tropical paradise, and spirits that rise from the fog. Nahanni's geology is utterly unique. It's a blend of towering, icy cold mountains and lush green river bottoms, fueled by around 250 smoldering hot spring caverns that create mists of steam and sulfurous air, giving the Nahanni Valley an eerie, otherworldly atmosphere. The designated national park area is more than 7 million acres of wilderness that includes ice fields, mountains, alpine tundra, geysers, sinkholes, and boreal forests. Most travel through the area on the Naha-Dahe River, also called the South Nahanni River, which cleaves through the Mackenzie Mountains like a bolt of lightning. Sheer rock faces rise up on all sides of the river, creating several canyons before the watery path is blocked by Virginia Falls, a 315-foot, that's 96-meter high, waterfall, split in two by a large rock formation. That's twice the height of Niagara Falls. The river is a serious flood risk in the spring due to snowmelt. Severe weather in August and the harsh winters, which get down to below -50 degrees Fahrenheit, make the area inhospitable to humans for most of the year. The safest months to be in the valley are mid-June to August, just 2.5 humid months. When the weather isn't an issue, the wildlife might be. Grizzly bears, black bears, wolverines, moose, and wolves all live in the area, all of which can be aggressive depending on the situation. Because of all these dangers, many locations within the park have sinister names, such as Hell's Gate, Dead Men Valley, Headless Creek, the Headless Range, and the Funeral Range. But despite the dangers, the valley's huge peaks, deep canyons, hot springs, geysers, caves, gorges, and beautiful untouched forests draw many adventurous people to explore the area, both hikers and paddlers. The Nahanni area was named a national park in 1976 and a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1978. Today, it's quite a popular adventure area, with around 300 visitors a year, but no permanent settlements within the park. The name Nahanni is derived from the language of the Dene people, who have called the area home for thousands of years. The Dene have historically inhabited central and northwestern Canada, including along the Mackenzie River Valley, which runs along the base of the Mackenzie Mountains. The Dene encountered European traders, explorers, and missionaries as early as the 1700s. In the 1800s, the Hudson Bay Company set up trading posts for fur traders all along the Mackenzie River. The fur trade flourished, boosting indigenous and white settler interactions. The discovery of oil and gold in the 1900s escalated white settlement and commercial development in Dene lands. Many Dene people were forced onto reservations and their traditional ways of life restricted. However, as much as white settlers tried to settle in the Nahanni Valley, they were always unsuccessful. In Athabaskan, the language of the Dene, Nahanni means the people over there and refers to a tribe of mountain-dwelling people known as the Naha. Oral histories hold that the Naha often raided the lowland settlements of the Dene. Because of this, the Dene avoided Upper and Central Nahanni region until the Naha mysteriously vanished. Dene oral traditions are rich in history, but also spiritual legends. Over the years, many mysterious stories have emerged from the Dene about the area. These stories include the tale of the Dene's strike back against the warlike Naha, only to find their villages empty, as if the Naha had disappeared into thin air. There are also tales of massive beasts that resemble woolly mammoths and wolf-like creatures called wahila by the Inuit, which resemble the now extinct amphision, nicknamed the wolf bear. There are also Dene tales of short, hairy human-like creatures called nukluk, who carried stone-tipped clubs and ate human flesh, and spirits moving through the fog that often hangs in the valley. When white fur traders began hunting in the area, they took note of these stories. Over the years, more mysterious incidents added to the valley's malevolent reputation. Many unfortunate travelers and explorers have gone missing or turned up dead and decapitated. I'm going to get into the details, but first an ad must play. However, before the ads run, I'd like to ask you to please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. This podcast is free to the over 20,000 people who listen to it every month. I'm very grateful for the 200 or so of you who've chosen to financially support me and the MCP. Thank you so much. However, without more patrons, this podcast can't continue running in its current form. Creating the podcast is a full-time job for me, and research materials and bills cost money. To be perfectly transparent, with Patreon memberships plus ad revenue, the podcast is currently only making about $650 a month. So if you're a regular listener but haven't joined the Patreon community, please consider it. It's a great group of people, and it costs less than all the coffee you'll buy in a month. You'll also get more episodes and access to some awesome bonus content and our Discord server. An annual membership is also a really great gift for the holidays. Every little bit helps, and while I hate asking for help, I need yours. Please consider helping out the MCP. Go to bit.ly/morbidpatron, that's bit.ly/morbidpatron to sign up. You'll have my eternal gratitude. The Nahanni's reputation stems from Dene legends, but also from a string of incidents, including deaths and disappearances. The nickname, the Valley of Headless Men, or Headless Valley, has been given to a valley where the mountains open up and the river briefly spreads out. It's also known as 200-Mile Gorge. This is supposedly the location where several corpses were discovered, all without their heads. The tales begin in the early 1900s with two brothers, William and Frank McLeod. Gold was discovered in the Klondike region east of the Mackenzie Mountains in August of 1896. When news of gold reached San Francisco and Seattle, it triggered a gold rush, with hundreds of thousands of prospectors swarming into the area, hoping to get rich. It was inevitable that gold fever would spread from the Yukon into the Northwest Territories. According to legend, in 1904, William and Frank, who were either Scottish or of mixed Indigenous and European descent, set out from Edmonton, Alberta, or in some versions of the story, British Columbia or Alaska, either trying to reach the Yukon by a new route or trying to find gold in the Nahanni area itself. Either way, they were successful, ending up in Fort Layard, a ways south of the Nahanni area, with a haul of gold. Some tales have more details, such as rocky relations with the Dene in the area, and that they only found a small medicine bottle's worth of gold nuggets. Some stories even mention the methods by which the McLeods found their gold, using sluices they made from wood, and that the area they found it was in the Flat River Canyon. Apparently, William worked for the Hudson Bay Company for a bit afterwards, but the brothers soon felt the itch again. They set off in 1905 or 1906 on another expedition, this time with a companion named Weir. They set up along the tree line not far below the Second Canyon along the South Nahanni River, or perhaps in the Flat River Canyon. Either way, they were never heard from again. During the time they were missing, rumors spread that they had found a gigantic gold mine somewhere in the mountains. Supposedly, one of the brothers often carved messages into trees, and one was found in 200-Mile Gorge saying, "We have found a fine prospect." The legend continues that around 1908, another gold prospecting expedition, led by a third McLeod brother, Charlie, ventured into the Nahanni. It's said that they found two bodies, mere skeletons. Some stories say that the skeletons were tied to a tree, both missing their skulls. Another version says that the skeletons were found in their sleeping bags near a campfire, one reaching for its gun, and the other wrapped up tight in a sleeping position. The skeletons were supposedly identified as the McLeod brothers by Charlie. It said Charlie buried the headless men, planting a cross to mark their graves, with 7 witnesses in the expedition party looking on. This incident earned the valley its Headless moniker, and the Flat River the name Headless Creek. Weir, the third man with the McLeods, was nowhere to be found. There were rumors at the time that he'd been seen at several trading posts, including one in Telegraph Creek in British Columbia, sparking speculation that he had killed the McLeod brothers. Apparently, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, or RCMP, sought him out and eventually found him in Vancouver, where they took $8,000 worth of gold nuggets off of him. However, none of this legend can be confirmed, though I searched several archives for any historical documentation. Due to this lack of documentation, forensic investigation, and photographs, the true story of this incident will never be known. But the story of the McLeods spread quickly through the northern camps, retold in saloons and supply lines until the details were muddied. Many believed they had found a rich vein before they died, and that Weir had escaped with their gold and disappeared into the coast. The lost McLeod mine was said to lie somewhere beyond the Second Canyon. Soon enough, prospectors were pushing into the Nahanni in search of it, and while no one struck gold, they returned with more stories of strange happenings. One of the men who supposedly went looking for the mine was Swiss prospector Martin Jorgensen, who went into the Nahanni in 1914. Jorgensen built a small cabin, and it said he wanted to become a permanent resident of the area. He sent letters at one point claiming he'd struck gold. When he went silent, a search party went to his cabin and found it burned to the ground. His headless corpse was found either nearby or in the burned-out ruins. Another legend of the Nahanni that doesn't involve gold tells of a woman named Annie Lafferty. Annie traveled with a hunting party into the Nahanni in 1926. She somehow got separated from the group and disappeared. Months later, a fur trader named Big Charlie said he'd seen a woman matching Annie's description, climbing a nearby hill completely naked. It's thought that this was Annie, and that she'd experienced something in the Nahanni that drove her mad. In 1927, another discovery added to the mysteries of the valley. The skeletal remains of a man known only as Yukon Fisher were found near Bennett Creek, not far from where the McLeod brothers' skeletons were found. It said he too was decapitated and his camp burned to the ground. Fisher, who is said to be either an outlaw or a prospector, was known to use gold nuggets to trade in trading posts. He was also wanted by the RCMP for years. While the last few tales have been unsubstantiated, there are several articles from the Edmonton Journal that discuss a 1928 to 1929 expedition by a party led by J.M. Gilroy and Angus Hall in search of the McLeod mine. Hall went missing and may have made it to Bennett Creek, as a footprint was found there. However, neither Hall nor any gold was discovered. In 1931, a miner named Phil Powers was found within the charred remains of his cabin. He had also been decapitated. It's said that the RCMP were called in and deduced it was a faulty stovepipe. Most people weren't satisfied with that answer, and I was unable to find any documentation of this. In 1945, another body of a man, probably a miner, was found dead in his sleeping bag without his head. That same year, trapper John O'Brien was found frozen next to his campfire, matches still in his hand. The many headless deaths in the Nahanni are thought by many to be the work of a single killer, possibly a man named Albert Johnson, who lived about 40 miles from the Nahanni in a log cabin on the Rat River. The name Albert Johnson is a pseudonym. The man's real name is unknown, but he was also known as the Mad Trapper of Rat River. The discovery of his presence in the area began in December of 1931 with a report by indigenous trappers to the police in Aklavik that someone was tampering with their animal traps. Johnson was indicated as the likely culprit. On December 26th, Constable Alfred King and Special Constable Joe Bernard of the RCMP, both of considerable northern experience, trekked the 60 miles, or 97 kilometers, to Johnson's cabin to ask him about the allegations. Seeing smoke coming from the chimney, they approached the cabin to talk. Johnson ignored their knocks at his door. King looked into the cabin window, at which point Johnson placed a sack across it. The two constables eventually decided to return to Aklavik to get a search warrant. King and Bernard returned 5 days later with 2 other men. Johnson again ignored them. Eventually, King tried to force the door. Before he could get it open, Johnson shot him through it. A brief firefight ensued, but the police team managed to escape and get King back to Aklavik, where he eventually recovered. Johnson fled, and the police mounted a manhunt. A 150-mile chase on foot ended in a shootout on the Eagle River on the border between the Northern Territories and the Yukon. Johnson was fatally wounded. On his body were found several gold teeth. The police believed these may have been extracted from the mouths of the prospectors that had been found dead in the Headless Valley, the McLeods, Jorgensen, Fisher, and Powers. They believed it so much that they put this theory on file, and I was able to read the report. This gives a bit more weight to the rumors that headless bodies of prospectors really were found in the Headless Valley. Another mysterious story with documentation is that of Angus Blake Mackenzie. On January 5, 1962, Canadian registered aircraft CF-FYN, a Cessna 180, crashed in the Mackenzie Mountains in the Nahanni region. The pilot, Mackenzie, survived the crash and set up a camp a short distance from the crash site, using supplies from the cargo to stay fed and healthy. His diary detailed his time in the Nahanni and his confidence that rescue would come when he didn't arrive at his destination. Several police search aircraft did fly overhead, but none of them spotted him. Notches scratched into a tree above his makeshift tent, number 51, suggesting that he survived for 51 days. Mackenzie kept the diary until February 20th, 1962, and then the entries stopped. However, the final entries were full of obvious hallucinations and the idea that he might be found if he hiked to Starvation Camp on Macmillan Lake. Missing from the supplies and equipment carried on the plane were a pair of snowshoes, a sleeping bag, and a rifle. This suggests that Mackenzie left the camp in a desperate attempt to reach Macmillan Lake and likely died of exposure. 6 months later, his plane, his camp, and his diary were discovered by chance. No further trace of him has ever been found. The most recent mysterious deaths that have been well documented occurred in 2005. Best friends David Horsey and Frederick Hardesty disappeared between June 12th and June 16th while visiting a friend's cabin in the Nahanni area. They were both experienced hikers, and the cabin was found in a suspicious state by police, with bullet holes in the walls, but also all locked up. All firearms remained in the cabin, and food supplies and wood were well stocked. Horsey's body was found on June 27th in thick brush about 2.3 miles or 3.7 kilometers from the cabin, with apparent burns on his arms. This area had previously been searched, and the thick brush was blamed for missing the body the first time. The body was subsequently flown to Edmonton for an autopsy. Hardesty's body was found floating in the North Nahanni River on July 8th, 12.5 miles, about 20 kilometers, away from the cabin. It too was in an area that searchers had already covered several times, in canoes and on shore. The coroner determined that Horsey died of hypothermia and Hardesty drowned. No other details of the autopsies are available, and the families of the two men still have questions and are unsatisfied with the police investigation. Unfortunately, the crime scene was contaminated by both search parties and police, so it's likely the answers will remain lost. The many headless deaths in the Nahanni have been blamed on serial killers, aggressive locals, mysterious creatures, and the so-called curse of the Nahanni. While serial killers are more probable than curses, a more mundane but no less gruesome explanation is more likely. If a human dies from exposure, that is cold and/or starvation out in the wilderness, their body will begin to naturally decay. The study of all the things that can occur during this process is called taphonomy. Taphonomic processes can have a huge effect on the human body, creating and sometimes obscuring all kinds of evidence that forensic experts look for to determine what happened at the time of death and after. As a human body decomposes in an outdoor environment, numerous things can affect the process. Heat, cold, clothing, soil type and acidity, weather, and the presence of certain bacteria and insects can speed up or slow down the rate of decay. The location of death can affect the position of the body as it skeletonizes as well. If someone died leaning up against a rock, their body may collapse as it decays. If they died in an area with moving water, the water may carry the body or parts of it to a different location. If they died on a slope, heavier skeletal elements may slide or roll down that slope as the body decays. The presence of animal scavengers can seriously affect the state of the body and is a very common occurrence. Scavengers tend to remove limbs and scatter smaller bones as they consume the flesh of the corpse. This can cause damage as well, or perhaps obscure any damage that caused death, called perimortem trauma. Scavengers range from small mammals like mice and rats to medium-sized ones like wolves. Some birds are also known to scavenge. Larger predators like bears can also become scavengers in certain situations. A large animal could carry off or break apart a human skull in the process of scavenging the corpse, and the Nahanni region is full of large predators. Grizzly bears, black bears, and even a wolverine might be able to move a partially decayed human skull. While a whole skull seems hard and heavy, it's actually quite easy to break, and once a skull is skeletonized and broken into pieces, those pieces are easily dispersed further. The skull might be the easiest, most accessible part of a corpse for scavengers to get to if the person died wrapped up in a sleeping bag. I'm not saying this is 100% the reason so many of the dead were headless, but it is a likely scenario. Competition with other prospectors is another more likely scenario. Gold does something to humans, making normal people act abnormal. And when they're far from society and any repercussions, murder is a quick way to eliminate the competition. Perhaps the heads were removed by the killer to hinder identification. There's also a large chance that information may have become muddled over the years. These deaths occurred in the early 1900s, and many lack any sort of documentation. The legends could be a misunderstanding of the original events. An article in the Vancouver Sun from 1947 contained an interview with the nephew of Frank and William MacLeod, also named William MacLeod. He stated that his uncle's bodies had their heads when they were discovered, and that the third man, Weir, was also found, having died of starvation. William then traveled to the Nahanni and spoke with the local Dene people, who explained that the brothers had run across a Dene man who was known to be insane. The man had killed and then eaten the brothers. This story is less mysterious, but no less gruesome. However, like the legends, it is also unsubstantiated. It's difficult to say if the deaths and disappearances in the Nahanni are mysterious and strange when compared to the national average. They've certainly been woven into an interesting story, but the truth beneath all the layers of lore is that the Nahanni region is dangerous. However, it's not as unexplored and isolated as the stories say. It's been well surveyed, and it's quite a popular adventure tourism area. During the summer, there are half a dozen tour and expedition groups in the valley on any given day. The Canadian government has given this warning about the Nahanni region on the Parks Canada website. Quote, "Since Nahanni National Park Reserve was established, at least 5 people have died while traveling along the South Nahanni River and its tributaries." End quote. They go on to say that some of the deaths, quote, "likely resulted from inexperience, but the majority were unfortunate situations where highly capable people were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. Nahanni National Park Reserve is remote and at times a very unforgiving place. Plan your trip well, and above all else, use your intelligence. Mistakes may be fatal." End quote. The Nahanni area is still a dangerous place. Today we have the technology to make it less so, but in the past it would have been downright deadly. If anything went wrong, and many things did, death was the likely result. And with no way to call for help and no easy way to find the dead, people began to wonder out loud what happened, making their own assumptions. These stories then wove the web of mystery that surrounds the area, now solidified with names like the Valley of Headless Men. And that's why the Nahanni region, especially the Valley of Headless Men, draws out our curiosity. The Morbid Curiosity podcast is produced by H. Lloyd. If you'd like to get in touch or suggest a morbid topic, you can do so on Facebook and Instagram at Morbid Curiosity Podcast or on our website, www.morbidcuriositypodcast.com. If you like the podcast, please share it with your friends and give us a rating on whatever podcast app you use. This helps the MCP reach new listeners and expand this wonderfully creepy community. Thank you to everyone who has already done so. Because of you, the listeners, our creepy community is growing strong. The MCP has joined the Straight Up Strange podcast network, which hosts true crime, paranormal, history, science, folklore, and other enigmatic podcasts. Nothing is off limits when you enter the world of Straight Up Strange. The MCP is also part of the Belfry Podcast Network, a haven for goth culture featuring podcasts, blogs, and videos, all catering to the darker side of life. If you'd like to support the MCP but would rather not become a patron, you can give one-time donations on our website and our Ko-fi page. Also on our website are links to all our social media, a full list of episodes, links to our merch, and our mailing list. We also have an Amazon wish list at bit.ly/morbidwishlist. That's bit.ly/morbidwishlist. Any purchases from this list are greatly appreciated. We are eternally grateful for your support. My name is Hallie, and until next time, thanks for listening.